Who watches the Watchmen? We do! At ScreenRant, we're looking back at Zack Snyder's adaptation of Alan Moore's seminal graphic novel. Snyder's known for sticking close to the source material in both its story and its visuals. But what nods, homages, and Easter eggs made it into the final cut? Join us as we go through these 25 things you may have missed in The Watchmen. And when we're done, comment below on any crazy things you may have noticed in either Snyder's Watchmen or the HBO series of the same name. First things first, Snyder likes his musical choices, and he likes them to serve as the backing tracks for some slow-motion stunts. The musician whose material gets the most airtime is quite possibly the greatest songwriter of our time, Mr. Bob Dylan. But that's not without precedent. After all, Bob Dylan and his lyrics are referenced in the pages of Alan Moore's graphic novel. We hear "The Times They Are A-Changing" used during that opening montage, showing major events of the 20th century, now with superheroes involved. We also hear covers of Dylan's Desolation Row and All Along the Watchtower. A panel in the graphic novel contains the following lyric from Watchtower. "Outside in the cold distance, a wild cat did growl. 2 riders were approaching, and the wind began to howl." The best art imitates life, and Watchmen wastes no time in creating a world that so closely mimics our own it feels like it could actually have happened. You know, if some people decided to take neighborhood watching to the next level and become costumed crime fighters.
We're society's only protection.
From what?
One of the things that seems like it would actually happen is the existence of Hollis Mason's tell-all book, Under the Hood. As the original Night Owl, Mason does what any celebrity would do after they semi-retire and need some money. He dishes on the most famous aspects of his life in a best-selling novel. In the Watchmen comic, the reader is treated to excerpts of Under the Hood to divulge some important plot points. In the Watchmen movie, a copy of Under the Hood can be spotted on the desk of Adrian Veidt, aka Ozymandias. Zack Snyder's Watchmen wastes no time in nodding to other superhero origin stories right from the get-go. The movie's opening montage is full of memorable images, but one that particularly sticks out involves a reference to a hero from the DC Comics universe. The shot that has the credit in association with Legendary Pictures features the original Night Owl punching a firearm-toting thug in the face. Batman posters line the wall behind them, and a couple dressed to the nines is facing the scene. They're exiting a nearby doorway for the Gotham Opera House next to posters for Die Fledermaus. So, of course, this couple is none other than Martha and Thomas Wayne. And since Night Owl saved their lives, we guess that in this universe, young Bruce never becomes Batman. Rorschach is one of the scrappiest, toughest cookies in comic book history. Regardless of your thoughts on Snyder's Watchmen, you gotta admit that actor Jackie Earle Haley did his best to bring the trench-coated masked hero to life. In the world of the Watchmen, when Vigilante's very existence has been outlawed, Rorschach hasn't stopped his secretive crime-fighting ways. A TV news report offers its viewers footage of Rorschach, and you'll probably notice that it looks just like the famous 1967 footage of Bigfoot. Yep, Rorschach's movements, glancing over his right shoulder as he walks past, mirror the movements of the creature in the notorious Patterson-Gimlin film of Bigfoot. Back in the 60s, when the world was gripped in Cold War hysteria and nuclear annihilation seemed like it could be triggered at any moment, 2 TV shows created smart, allegorical stories to reflect what was going on in the world: The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits. Near the finale of the Watchmen movie, Sally Jupiter can be seen watching an episode of The Outer Limits from 1963 titled Architects of Fear. In the episode, scientists plan to create a fake alien. By convincing world governments that we are not alone in the universe, they hope this hoax would unite world leaders against a common interstellar enemy and end the Cold War.
Can't see how making a fuss is gonna help things any.
This plot closely mirrors Adrian Veidt's master plan in the comic. In the Watchmen universe, the 20th century had very different outcomes to its many controversial events. In this world, Nixon remains president throughout the 80s and America won Vietnam. As a result, in the movie, you might have noticed that every American flag has 51 stars. Well, that's because, just as in the comic book, Vietnam had been made into America's 51st state. Also of the era are the counterculture elements referenced in the film's opening montage. A hippie puts a flower into the barrel of a soldier's firearm, mimicking the famous flower power photo from 1967. When the soldiers fire several seconds later, this moment appears to reference the incident at Kent State University in 1970. The movie's opening montage takes us through many events over the course of several decades, including Sally Jupiter's early career, her pinup days, her unhappy home life, and ultimately her retirement. At a party, we see a poster that reads "Happy Retirement, Sally" behind what is basically a recreation of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper painting. This is pretty appropriate since one could consider this moment the Last Supper of the Watchmen's precursor team, the Minutemen. It also makes sense for the comedian to be striking the same exact pose as Judas in the original Da Vinci painting. Sally Jupiter's manager and future husband Lawrence Schexnayder stands on Sally's other side. He raises a finger in a pose similar to that of Thomas's in the Last Supper painting. Ozymandias may be one of the several characters watching the Watchmen, but the retired supergroup isn't the only thing he keeps tabs on. In fact, in one scene, one of Adrian Veidt's many security screens displays footage of Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Rambo's the best combat vet I've ever seen.
The action sequel features the pumped-up Vietnam veteran being sent back to that country to find POWs left behind after the war. While Rambo and the Watchmen share some Vietnam references, Zack Snyder said he included this particular scene from Rambo because Sly Stallone's character shares the screen with a man wearing a smiley face button. Like most major directors, Zack Snyder has a core group of actors he loves working with. Since his epic hit 300, Gerard Butler's career has been linked to the director. While Butler isn't given an on-screen role in the film, he does appear as the narrator of Watchmen's Black Freighter segments.
I beg that they should take my eyes.
Black Freighter, the comic within the Watchmen comic, isn't really given screen time in the 2009 Watchmen movie, but it did get its own straight-to-DVD spin-off following Watchmen's big screen success. Snyder also gives this a shout-out in Justice League when Barry Allen, otherwise known as The Flash, can be spotted wearing a Black Freighter t-shirt. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, rock stars, pop superstars, and music artists started adopting outrageous personas and glammed-out costumes. Their larger-than-life outfits and appetites appealed to some audiences almost as much as their music. They seemed to be as fantastical as superheroes in comic books and on TV. So, it makes sense that Watchmen would include a clip of Ozymandias visiting the famous New York disco Studio 54. He fits right in with the likes of David Bowie and Mick Jagger, whose likenesses can be seen standing nearby. While they only appear in this quick cameo near a group resembling the Village People, the actors portraying Jagger and Bowie are featured in a close-up as part of photographer Clay Enos's collection, released in a book titled Watchmen Portraits. Time magazine likes to do feature stories on real-life superheroes. Doctors, scientists, respected heads of state. But in the Watchmen movie, a 1984 issue features Dr. Manhattan and Ozymandias shaking hands. With the world of the Watchmen and the state it's in, it's no wonder the public would turn to brilliant and earth-shaping figures like the world's smartest human and the only man to attain honest-to-goodness otherworldly powers. In our own reality, superheroes have graced Time's cover for Superman's 50th birthday, as well as in commemorations of the successes of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies and the MCU. As we see throughout the movie, Watchmen contains a number of events that have been altered from our own timeline. It even has a nod to one of the most iconic meetups in pop culture history. On December 21st, 1970, Elvis Presley met with Richard M. Nixon. What exactly did the king of rock and roll have to do with the soon-to-be-disgraced leader of the free world? Well, Elvis wanted to use his influence as an iconic rock star to try and help the divided country as best as he could. This famous photo op was nodded to during the opening credits when we see a photo of the comedian shaking hands with Nixon. In the opening, in Laurie's childhood home, we see a snow globe resting atop a TV. This is a nod to the comic book, when Laurie breaks a snow globe upon discovering that the comedian is her father. In the comic, the crashing of the snow globe symbolizes the breaking of her beliefs about who her father was and where she thought she came from. It also may be a neat nod to Citizen Kane, which features a snow globe that Kane drops as he utters his last words. There, it harkens back to the snowy days that Kane would enjoy in his childhood, before he was ushered into a new life where his quest for ambition would destroy any sense he once had of a quiet and innocent life. Later, during the opening montage, when astronauts are seen landing on the moon, Neil Armstrong and company have a strange visitor. In this version of history, Dr. Manhattan joins Armstrong for his small step for man and giant leap for mankind. It's at this moment that we hear Neil say, this is a reference to the same line that Armstrong reportedly said during his initial transmission back to NASA. According to an urban legend, Armstrong, as a young child, overheard his neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Gorski. Mr. Gorski had asked Mrs. Gorski for a particular favor, and Mrs. Gorski said she'd only do it when that kid next door walks on the moon. Armstrong later rebuked this claim, saying that it was just a made-up story. When the remaining Watchmen approach Ozymandias' lair near the climax of the film, we see Ozymandias watching many security feeds at once. In the various clips of footage are Zack Snyder's hidden nods to the Watchmen as well as his own work. There's 300 Spartans, the 1962 movie that had a heavy influence on his own film 300. He's also hidden Failsafe, about the nuclear impact of the Cold War. Plus The Day the Earth Stood Still and a Marvin the Martian cartoon that referenced Dr. Manhattan's impact on the story. Meanwhile, a clip of the 80s classic Road Warrior reminds us of the time period in which Watchmen is set. And there's also some more explicit material hidden among the footage to shake things up. The original Silk Spectre's likeness appears on objects large and small throughout the film. A painting of her in a classic 1940s pinup pose is seen on the nose of the plane that drops the atomic bomb during World War II in the opening of the film. Her likeness also appears on the comedian's lighter, hinting that he may never truly have stopped carrying a torch, or a lighter, for Sally Jupiter. It's used by the comedian to burn a map of the US during the scene featuring the Crimebusters meeting. It should be noted that also on the plane is the name of one of the movie's writers, Peter Apperlow. Zack Snyder and his team's keen eye didn't just revolve around the sets, costumes, and situations. They honed in on small, minor prop details from the graphic novel as well. Case in point, the four-legged chicken. In the graphic novel, a four-legged chicken is brought in by a waiter. During the scene in the movie where Laurie and Dan eat at the fancy restaurant, we don't get to see any four-legged chicken, but we do get to hear a voice say,
I'm glad I ordered the four-legged chicken.
Who reads The Watchmen? Well, Night Owl. Apparently, if you look closely during one scene featuring Dan Dreiberg's office, you'll find that he owns a copy of the original Watchmen graphic novel. How meta is that? Not only does it show the tongue-in-cheek nature of the production design team, but it also shows that Zack Snyder doesn't always take his work hyper seriously. Besides, maybe in the Watchmen's universe, a comic book writer named Alan Moore wrote a non-fiction biographical comic book chronicling the real-life adventures of the superhero team, and Dan Dreiberg just happened to own it. While Nixon may still be the president, and the 20th century was quite different in the world of the Watchmen than in our own, the culture, the politics, and the styles were still pretty similar to the 1980s that we're more familiar with. And Ozymandias appears to have been a purveyor of that style. While he was pretty open about his crime-fighting past and presented much of his lifestyle to the world, he appears to have held other aspects of his life closer to his vest. Obviously, his master plan was a closely guarded secret until the end of the film, but Zack Snyder also made sure that only the most observant fans would pay special attention to Adrian Veidt's computer screen. On it, they likely saw the small file titled Boys that hinted at where Ozymandias' preferences lie. In the movie, during a news report, it said that Rorschach's age is 35. However, his age in the graphic novel is a full 10 years older at 45. That would make more sense given his place within the narrative as a whole and explain how he, at his age, was hooked up with the Watchmen in the years before the events of 1985. It's believed that the report stating his age as 35 is a mistake on the part of the movie's creative team. That said, the lead actors in the Watchmen movies were generally younger than their characters' median ages in the graphic novel. This was done so that it would be easier for the younger actors to put on an effect and put on makeup to play older versions of themselves, rather than having older actors fit into spry younger characters. While the comic book strongly implied that the comedian was used heavily by the US government as a hitman for hire, the movie showed us many of what these moments may have been. We know the comedian seemed to enjoy his job a bit too much, relishing in the mayhem that he caused on behalf of his country. But his association with the JFK assassination takes him into irredeemable territory. During the opening credits montage, the comedian is clearly seen on a grassy knoll in Dallas, wearing the unassuming attire that some witnesses say they saw on a person in that general area during the fateful day in 1963. Some also claim to see a puff of smoke from that area, and Snyder's montage alludes to the smoke being from the comedian's signature cigar. This smaller moment is a testament to Zack Snyder's willingness to stick closely to the visual cues within the pages of Alan Moore's story. Even when there was no room to adapt a certain moment or frame, the filmmakers still found room to hint at it. Think back to the sequence where Silk Spectre and Night Owl are having a wild night, back in costume, and they engage in a rescue effort for a blazing apartment building. Around that time, we see a shot where the Silk Spectre puts paper cups back into a storage spot. It may seem like a bit of stage business to make Silk Spectre actress Malin Ackerman look busy, but actually it's a reference to the scene in the comic. In the graphic novel, after the Silk Spectre and Night Owl help the people in the apartment, they give them coffee. In the movie, these cups nod to the fact that the two superheroes offered refreshments to the people they just rescued. This Easter egg isn't just a nod to Watchmen's alternate take on the 20th century history, but cinema history as well. During the opening credits montage in 1940, the classic superhero team known as the Minutemen take a photograph. Here, the original Night Owl offers his regards to the photographer, saying, "Thank you, Ouija." Well, Ouija isn't just a random character created by Alan Moore or Snyder & Co. Ouija was the nickname of Austrian photographer Arthur Fellig, whose iconic black and white pictures got him much renown in the art world and led to future collaborations with perhaps one of the greatest film directors of all time, Stanley Kubrick, the guy behind Clockwork Orange, another vision of alternate history entertainment, and Dr. Strangelove, an inspiration of the Nixon war room scenes in the 2009 Watchmen. While this isn't in the 2009 Watchmen per se, Zack Snyder likes to fill his movies with Easter eggs to, well, his other movies. The DCEU isn't safe from Snyderverse references, particularly Man of Steel. In the 2013 origin film, the comedian's signature smiley face logo can be found painted lightly on the wall of a crumbling structure behind Superman in one shot. While this may seem a bit out of place for a DC Comics movie, there appears to be a deeper connection with DC than simply the licensing and the ownership of the graphic novel. At the end of the comic and of the movie, Dr. Manhattan proposes the idea that he might want to create life, and perhaps even a universe that's all his own. It was later revealed that Dr. Manhattan just might be the creator of the DC universe, full of the heroes and villains we've been reading about for almost a century. The series Doomsday Clock later confirmed that Dr. Manhattan might just be a powerful being within the universe. But you never know when DC's writers will change or retcon the narrative to further increase or diminish Dr. Manhattan's importance.
I said, leave me alone!
Damon Lindelof's Watchmen series on HBO is a sequel to the graphic novel, not necessarily the 2009 film. But that doesn't mean Zack Snyder's movie doesn't have any connection to the TV show. In the Watchmen 2019 pilot, Police Chief Judd Crawford, as played by Don Johnson, is sharing dinner with his wife as well as Detective Angela Abar and her husband. Nat King Cole's Unforgettable plays in the background. This is the same song that's played in the opening of 2009's Watchmen, when a masked intruder beats up the comedian and tosses him out of a high-rise window. This song is also said to be the backing track on Adrian Veidt's nostalgia commercials in the Watchmen graphic novel. Eagle-eyed fans have also pointed out that a documentary series seen in the background of the world of the Watchmen TV show profiles the 1940s team known as the Minutemen. There, we are treated to a quick shot of the legendary hero known as Hooded Justice. His costume in the HBO show closely resembles the design of the character in Zack Snyder's Watchmen. That goes to show you, no character design is ever really thrown out. Now, there's way more Easter eggs and gems hidden throughout the film than just one video can cover. To name them all, to distill so specific a list from all that movie, it's like turning air into gold. But if there's any big ones that we missed, let us know in the comments section below. With the HBO show, there's always something about the Watchmen to, well, watch. So subscribe to ScreenRant for more videos like this one. See you soon.